The Ticket.
Michigan Insider Podcast is brought to you in part by defense attorney and WTKA legal insider Joe Simon. Find Joe at themichigandefenders.com.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050, WTKA, online at WTKA.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side. You know what that music means. It means it's the time of the show where we give you the latest and the greatest in football and/or basketball recruiting. Take your recruiting questions at this time and this time only at 734-998-1050. You can tweet us at Michigan Insider. Tweet me directly at SamWeb77. You can email us at studio@WTKA.com. The recruiting roundup today is going to feature an excerpt from the latest edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider podcast. We got back on the grind. On the podcast grind, another full jam-packed episode where we talk a ton about receiver recruiting and some developments along those lines. We talk about upcoming visitors as Michigan has two game weekends left, of course. So we'll get into that here. And then we rewind because you might remember I took this West Coast trip recently, and a huge focus for that was going to be, or is, the podcast. We didn't record last week, and so now all of the things, including some guest audio. So we hear from Mason Graham in there. We hear from Damani Jackson's dad in there. We hear from Zeke Berry and his brother in this podcast. It is a loaded episode, so be sure to check it out. But we'll get into an excerpt now from the latest edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider podcast. So here we go. All right, fellas. So, these last couple of games, home games of the season, gives you an opportunity to get some more guys on campus. Going to have some guys on campus for Indiana. We know Ohio State is going to be huge. But as far as recent additions go, Bryce, who are some guys that fans need to be on the lookout for?
Well, let's start with the Indiana game. Like you said, Sam, we'll start with actually two committed guys elsewhere. They're both teammates from Powder Springs, Georgia, down there. Michigan recently offered, you talked about that wide receiver board. Well, they added a name, Caleb Webb, 6'2.5", 185. He's committed to East Carolina. Now, here's the thing. Louisville and Tennessee have been on him extremely hard to the point of where he just took back-to-back visits to Tennessee. Followed that up with a visit to Louisville. He gets the offer to Michigan about a week or so ago, and now he's officially set to take a visit to Michigan this upcoming week. So he's a guy, though, that has extremely good speed. He ran a 10.91 in the 100 meters, so this guy can fly. And Michigan's – the thing with him, they've been monitoring him for some time now, Sam, but I think how the board is shaken out with the Trent decommitment, and then also Tyler Morris's injury, which he is ahead of the curve, but that is a tough injury still to come back from. They need another wideout in this class, and so they're making sure, regardless of Walker, whatever happens with him, they have that board where they can go to other guys if need be. So he's one name to keep an eye on this weekend. His teammate, Bryce Archie, 6'2", 175, 175 pounds. He's committed to Coastal Carolina. Again, a guy that's under the radar. He's been playing extremely good his senior season. And I know Michigan has committed Jaden Denical, right now committed from out there in California, who I saw. Very efficient quarterback. But I think Michigan at this point, man, they want another quarterback in this class. They've kind of flirted with that for some time now with Justin Martin, who now committed elsewhere to UCLA. But I think if they want to take a second one, this is the guy to watch. This guy, he's also expected for this upcoming weekend for Indiana. And he's a guy that, again, they've been keeping tabs on, and they really like his game, how he's improved as well. So those are two names. And another 2024 out in Washington, D.C., St. John's, Jordan Seaton, 6'5", 300 pounds. Number one player in D.C., number 100 player nationally, according to 24/7. Just a road grader. He mauls guys. Interior, just takes on guys, knocks them down. You can tell he looks the part, physically impressive. These are three names. We're gonna have more. We've already added more already for this weekend. But those are three names to watch. coming up that are going to be on campus for Michigan, and definitely guys that Michigan likes as well.
As far as new offers go, Steve, any ones you find particularly intriguing here of late?
I mean, Caleb Webb was the guy that I was going to mention just because I think he's very underrated. Someone on the board mentioned Amara Darboh vibes in his film. I think maybe he's a little bit longer, but he's a guy I wouldn't be sleeping on for Michigan necessarily. I mean, to set your visit less than a week, or I'm sorry, less than 24 hours. I think it was the same conversation he got offered that he set his official visit. That's a good sign, obviously. And not only that, I would caution like people that, East Carolina commitment. He's got 6 or 7 SEC offers. He's got Ole Miss is very heavy after him, as are Tennessee and South Carolina. So, not a guy I would look at. You see East Carolina commit, you get kind of discouraged or whatever. Not something I wouldn't look at that way. He's an 88 rating for us, and he has multiple SEC schools. Another offer I really liked was the other receiver, the kid they offered out of Texas in 23. Bryce, I think you spoke to him. Asamigo. It's Samuel. Another kid. Somehow you turn on a guy's film and you think, this guy shouldn't be ranked where he is. I know we talked about that a lot. This is another one. This guy in 23 looks like a stud. And what you like about his early offer sheet, Stanford, Northwestern. I want to say there might have been even like an Ivy League school on the early offer sheet. Means the kid's usually not only serious about academics, but has the academics to, where getting in and stuff won't be an issue. So might be a name to watch in 23. We talk about Jaylen Brown, Malik Elzy, I think is another guy out of the Chicago area that Michigan has been really high on. Might be able to add him to the list as well.
Yeah, man, it's going to get real thick. I mentioned that before. Really, really thick, really interesting. If you aren't on the MichiganInsider.com yet, what are you waiting for? I mean, we're leveling up staff-wise, adding Alejandro. And then you are going to get some really compelling recruiting storylines here down the stretch. So I mentioned my West Coast trip. Started out in New Orleans a couple of weeks ago. The plan was that whole trip was like setting up for a massive podcast update. And so I'm going to preview some of that now. First things first, Mason Graham. Fellas, when I say one of the most impressive motors I've seen on a prospect, he is relentless. His motor is as good as I've seen on any lineman since I've been doing this. And I've been doing it a long time. Now I don't say that to suggest that he's just some try-hard guy. He's talented. I mean, he's really strong. He has good burst. His technique is really, really good. He's not the twitchy guy that a Walter Nolan is or a guy like that, but really, really strong and quick, and pairs it with good leverage and technique. I mean, he's a guy. I don't know what you think about this, Bryce. I know you've talked to him and you follow along with the defensive line board a lot, but I think that this is a kid that, based on his work ethic, he's an early enrollee too. A chance to get acclimated to school and the team early. I think this is a kid that could possibly play out the gate.
He's one of my sleepers, Sam. And we actually talked about him before the podcast, and we also said there's a reason other schools are still recruiting him. It's not like Michigan can now just coast and, sign him on signing day and no problems. You still have USC, Oregon, a bunch of other schools still pushing extremely hard because they see what you see, Sam. A guy that just is not a good, he's got a great motor. He can do a lot. I think one of the most impressive things when I watch his film is he's playing both ways too.
Yeah, man.
And he's playing both ways. And he's not playing the Sisters of the Poor. He's playing, Bosco and, modern day. And he's in the Trinity League in California, which is regarded as the toughest conference in all of America of high school football. And for him to do what he's doing is flat out impressive. I think that's why Greg Biggins and others have ranked him and kept ranking him higher and higher.
Yeah, some of you who follow the site closely know I put the video, the interview with some highlights spliced in. I put that up on the site a little while ago. I just hadn't put it in the story yet. So if you watch that, you'll see some of the motor. Now we got the full highlights from that game coming too, as a matter of fact. But just to give you a snippet of a couple of things. Number one, I asked him about his motor. Does he ever get tired? Because it's just like, man, how do you do it? So here he is.
Do you ever get tired? Is there ever a moment when Mason Graham gets tired?
Yeah, I get tired, but I'm trained for the past 2 years. I've been starting both ways, so I've just been trained certified program, weightlifting program, just football program in general, just prepare me well for this moment. So.
Yeah, and so then like you said, Bryce, other schools see what I see, and so I said, look, man, they keep coming. They aren't going to stop. Other schools are chasing harder. What are you telling them?
It seems like other schools are kind of picking up the intensity of their interest now. Is that the fact that other schools kind of coming hard at you now?
Yeah, like Oregon, USC, they're coming pretty hard at me, but I'm solid with Michigan, so we're good.
So have they tried to convince you to come visit or anything like that at least?
Yeah, Oregon keeps on trying to get me to go to games. I'm solid with Michigan, and Oregon wants me to come and visit, but I was like, no, thank you, I'm good, thank you.
So at least Bryce, you're right. They can't rest on their laurels, but they got a kid who seems pretty strong in his commitment at this point. As long as they don't get complacent, I think they're gonna hold on to this kid.
Yeah, and he's a guy I think Sam too could play year one. I think that highly of him. I spoke very highly on the last podcast about Colston Loveland, and I think he's a future pro. Well, Mason Graham, I don't know I would go that extent, but I think he definitely is a possibly day one contributor. I think he's got that much potential. I think he will see the field for Michigan in year one, and I think he will make an impact. Michigan, I don't know if they have a guy like that on roster right now. And so I think he's got that potential.
Yeah, man, you like a guy like this in the room, Steve. I think we all think he's really, really talented. So he'll impact the team in that way. And of course, you can hear that podcast in its entirety wherever you get your podcast: Google, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes. Just search Michigan Insider Podcast. Up there'll come. Select the Michigan Recruiting Insider. You can also find it over on the MichiganInsider.com as well. And so, like I said, what are you waiting for? Things are really about to heat up. The Ohio State game is going to be another huge visit weekend. I believe it's going to be on par with Under the Lights. So get ready for that too. Speaking of getting ready, get ready to hear from our good friend, our legal expert at Insider, Joe Simon. That's coming up on the other side. Before we get to the break, I want to remind you, look, the fall window is closing. That fall window to get those jobs done around the house you've been putting off, getting ready for the winter. Well, if you get the right equipment, you can still knock those jobs out, right? And so with winter just around the corner, those fall jobs, time is of the essence to get them done. For construction jobs, big or small, Alta is the only choice I make. I've told you my story. We had a driveway to rip out. We needed some equipment. We went to Alta to rent a skid steer. Well, since 1984, Alta Equipment Company has been dedicated to providing outstanding service and support for all your construction equipment needs with industry-leading service programs, extensive part selection, and customized capabilities. My team at Alta Equipment Company is not just your dealership. They're your partner in success. Nearly 50 brands to choose from to get you ready for winter. Volvo, Takeuchi, Avant, Toro, Gale, Finn, and more. Alta is the premier company for sales, rentals, parts, and service. So don't go to some national chain where you get old machines and big prices. Call my friends at Alta at 844-GO-TO-ALTA. That's 844-GO-2 Alta, and let their experts get you what you need the first time, and tell them Sam sent you. We got to get to a break. Be back on the other side with Joe Simon. We'll return here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports Ann Arbor, a Cumulus station.